So after all of that, we can finally get started and get something on our page here. We've seen the navigation, we've seen some aspects of what the document is showing us in terms of the guidelines and so on, but let's actually get something on this page that we can start working with. Admittedly, there's a lot of little headaches getting to learn InDesign, and one of those is working with images. It's a little headache because it's very quickly overcome. We just have to understand what's happening when we bring an image in and we're trying to scale and size it. So we can see here that this document has two images, and those are in the files that we've been given for this exercise. So we're going to go to File and Place, and I'll suggest that you learn Command D. That is a very common key command in InDesign because it's what we're always doing. We're always placing items in, whether it's a Word doc of content or it's an image. So going to File Place is one where I recommend just saying do Command D, and it will become much more familiar. So File and Place, and we're going to navigate to our links, and we'll choose that large image of the iceberg. Now again, it's going to give you the thumbnail. Wherever you place that upper left corner of the thumbnail, the image is going to extend out from there. And this being a high resolution image, it's probably going to land and much of it even go off of our page. We'll just see what happens. So you can click anywhere and let it go. So it's fine, it's not too high resolution. And I'm just going to utilize my example here and see how close it is to the actual size. So it's pretty close. We don't have to do too much scaling, but that's what we're going to talk about here, scaling images. So what's happening? There's a few things going on here with an image, and this is once you overcome the aspect of images in InDesign, you'll find that it's one headache eliminated. It just takes a little bit of understanding. So we place the image in. We're seeing, of course, the image itself. We're seeing the frame around the image. And on that frame is a little link, and that is showing that this is a file that's been linked in. So we placed it in, so it by definition becomes a link, and it's linked to the file outside of InDesign. So this is our image frame. And this circle that's popping up here, when I hover over this, now I can hover in, even though that picture is there, and I have my main cursor selected, my selection tool, always defaulting back to that if you're not. The picture is selected, I scroll in and I can click and move that picture. But if I go over this circle that we're seeing, and I can still move it there, but going over that circle, it activates the hand. What that's going to do is move the image in the frame, and that's what often throws a lot of us off. So I'm going to undo that, Command Z, and when I move the image in a frame, see that orange guide, that orange frame around what I'm moving, that's indicating that the image, when it comes in a frame. That's annoying at first, but it's actually quite helpful and very clever in terms of working in layouts. So we placed the image in, it landed in this frame, but here is the actual image. Now I have that selected right now because I did so clicking on the circle, and we can see up at the top again, it's giving us some information about that image. And it's roughly 7.5 by 5. Now, I don't want this to be out of frame like that. I don't want it to be offset. If I click out and even press W to presentation mode, everything looks fine, but it's offset to its frame. So it's kind of sloppy in terms of the structure of the document. So I can do undo, but what if you're beyond your undos, or you find an image that's like this? I can click on this. So again, I'm on my main cursor. I can click on the image, and I can go up to the object menu and go down to fitting. And I can fit the content to the frame, I can center the content, or I can fit the frame to the content. Now, if I had adjusted the size of the frame of this, and I adjusted it disproportionate to the image, I don't want to fit the frame to the content because that would skew the image. I'll show you an example of that. Let's say I did this, and then I selected fit image or fit content to frame. It skews that image, and we absolutely want to avoid that at all costs, especially when we're working with photography that we've been given, and we don't want to be skewing someone's photography, and then especially if there's a face, we don't want to be doing that. So I'm going to fit the frame in the object menu, fit the frame to the content, because it's the content that's important, not the frame in this case. So it's back to what I had when I placed it. Now, the question becomes, how do I scale this down? How do I make that image smaller? We don't have to make it too much smaller. We saw that it was quite close in size, but I still have to scale it. And this is where it becomes challenging. Now, the first thing with scaling in InDesign and the Adobe programs, except, and this is something that's a little odd now in Adobe, is that in Photoshop you no longer have to use the shift key when you scale. I don't know why they got rid of that and not in the other programs. However, the shift key becomes our best friend when we're scaling. So I have this selected. I just clicked off. Now I've got it selected again with my main cursor. And I'm going to hover over the corner here. So when my cursor looks like this, I can scale. When it looks like this, I can rotate. There's a rotation. I'll Command Z. When I scale, if I just scale, I'm not holding, I'm just clicking and dragging my mouse, I'm randomly, by hand, sort of freehand, scaling the frame only. Now I don't want to do that. If I hold Shift and scale, I'm scaling the frame only, but proportionately. So that's closer. I'll undo that. What I want to do is scale both the frame and the image. So I'm going to do Command Shift, click and drag. And that way I've scaled both the frame and the image in it, and I've maintained all of the proportions. So again, select it, hover over the corner to where you see the cursor do this with the two arrows. Command Shift, click and drag, and that's scaling the image. It's not skewing anything, and it's scaling the image and the frame at the same time. So I'll undo that. Now I want to scale it exactly to the size I have here. So I'm going to go bring it over there, Command Shift, click and drag, and very gently scale it to that size. And it's on the bleed guide. It's bleeding off of the page, we can see. So I'm going to take that up to the bleed guide, and it's centered based on the margins. So we're actually utilizing the margins to make sure it's centered. So if you can get to this point, that's great. Scaling the image slightly to match the original, and then getting it placed in place with the margins. Now you'll notice that even though it's placed, its location is a little different than this one. Because we lined up our reference document, and we're in this case learning InDesign through the recreation of something, we can utilize our guides if we want to be very accurate with this. So I could bring a guide down outside of my page here, and I'm going to bring it just to the top of the iceberg. So now I can see, okay, I'm going to move this up to the top of, so that the top of this iceberg is reaching that guide. And first I'm going to go to my view menu and grids and guides and lock the guides, just so I know that they're not going to move. Now I can do this one of two ways. I can move the whole frame and image or I can move just the image. I'm going to choose to move just the image because I've already got my frame lined up at the bleed guide. So I'll click on the image by clicking that circle, and then I'm going to drag it up, but I'm also going to hold the shift key down while I drag it. And what that's going to do is keep it in alignment. It's going to keep it from moving left or right at all. So I'll hold shift, click and drag, and it's almost there. So now I can just use my up arrow and kind of nudge it into place to match the other image. Now we see here that it's out of frame. So I'll go back to my main cursor, click off, click my frame, and I'm going to just close my frame up to where that's matching the image. What I could have also done there, of course, is done object, fitting, and fit framed content. And it's purely accurate, but then it goes past my bleed. So I have to go up here and close that anyway. Okay, so that's one way to ensure that we get it exact. And even this looks like it's slightly off there, but I'm not too worried about that. So that's the first thing, and it really is something that you have to get used to working with images in InDesign. And you'll want to practice that. Scaling, remember that you do Command Shift, or on the PC it's of course Control Shift, click and drag. Command Shift, click and drag to scale. And that way you're scaling, you're not skewing, and you're getting both the image and the frame and the image that's inside it.